Dave, why don't you tell us how the Aspiring Superintendents Academy came about? Why was it created? And how was it put together?
Really, it was a combination of circumstances. Number one, we heard from district-level administrators who were nervous or anxious about applying for a superintendency because they just weren't sure they were ready and they weren't sure what the superintendency entailed. We also heard from early career superintendents who weren't sure they were totally prepared for the first couple years of being a superintendent. And so as we started looking at the pipeline and the number of people applying for superintendencies, as an association, we really thought it was important to create programs for aspiring superintendents, people to consider entering the superintendency. Then when we took a look at different states across the country, some offered a week-long program. Some states didn't offer any program for people that were aspiring to the superintendency. And so AASA really found this vacuum that needed to be filled and stepped in to create what we believe is a really high-quality program for people that are aspiring to the superintendency. You know, as it relates to who was involved in creating it, it really was the AASA, the School Superintendents Association leadership team, along with a handful of superintendents who had been in the role for a while, along with some that have just started that could help us identify what they would have really, really appreciated knowing more about when they stepped into the position to start. Helen, would you have anything that you'd like to add to that piece?
Yeah, I think that one of the, an additional thing that we saw that we wanted, the gap we wanted to fill was that we looked at young leaders going into the superintendency, people who are younger and younger. Historically, people would work in a central office for a long time and cut their teeth in the central office, and then they go into the superintendency a little bit later. Now we've got so many younger people coming in, and they're not succeeding over the long term. And so we know that when superintendents succeed over the long term, it's the best for their districts. So that's one of the another reason that we wanted to put this Aspiring Academy together was to give those people the skills they need walking into the job so that they can stay longer in their first districts. And in terms of creating, who created it, Dave is right on target. We really went out to people in the field who had told us about the need. We created a team. We had a writer who created the curriculum with us. And we took that curriculum framework and put it into this year-long program that runs over 10 months with very intensive learning that we hope is getting people where they need to go when they walk into the superintendency.
Great. So this is a national program, AASA, right?
That's correct. Yeah, people from anywhere in the country can apply to join the program.
Okay. And how many years does it run?
This is our second year.
It's a 10-month program. It starts in July and finishes up the following May.
So are we in the second year or the first year of the program?
We're in the second year of the program.
Second year. Okay, great. Well, Dave, why don't you go on and tell us a bit about the specific goals of the Academy. What's the bottom line in terms of what you intend to accomplish?
We want our superintendents to be successful, and we don't want them to get fired.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. We know sustainability and leadership matters, and we want our superintendents, when they attain a superintendency position, to be successful and to stay for an extended period of time. And in order for that to happen, they need to be prepared. And so from our perspective, you know, there are a lot of deep goals, and we'll talk about those in a second, or I'll reference those in a second, but the overarching goal is for our superintendents to be prepared when they step in on day one, because, I mean, this job is incredible. I love being a superintendent of schools. I want everybody to love it as much as I do. We have such a huge impact on students and children and families and communities. We need our superintendents to be successful on day one. So we spend time really talking about how do you ensure that you're interacting with a Board of Education in an effective way. And you've been really helpful, Doug, in helping our participants learn about that work. You know, how do you ensure that you understand the finances of your state? legislation. And one of the other really important pieces is how to ensure you're not alone. You know, there's one superintendent in every school district. Almost any other position in the organization has a peer colleague. And so one of AASA's goals overall is to ensure that we have a network, we have connections, we have opportunities for people to collaborate, learn, share with each other. And this is a perfect opportunity for people to do that. And so what, you know, we've found as a byproduct goal of our academy is a lot of our aspiring folks stay together and they continue to connect with each other and they get together multiple times. They share problems of practice all the time. I received an email a couple weeks ago from one of last year's graduates sending a note out to the team saying, hey, I'm thinking about applying for this position. This is the need that the district has. Anybody have any insights? And I love that we've created this professional learning team cadre of colleagues who can really bounce ideas off each other. Helen, how about you? What additional things do you have?
I think, Dave, you're right on target. It did end up being a byproduct, or maybe not one of the main things in the curriculum, but it's probably one of the most important things is this network. And not only through AASA are they developing a network in their cohort, they also are being exposed to some of the best leaders and thinkers in education from across the nation. And that's whether it's you, Doug, doing the school board work with them, or it's some graduates of either the Aspiring Academy or certification program or our Urban Superintendents Academy who are doing the vital work out in the district. They come and spend time inside our academy, our Aspiring Academy, and they're open to creating relationships with the participants in the Aspiring Academy. So they also have that broader network that they're getting as well, which all goes to helping them stay in their jobs.
So you actually created a community, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you know, I was struck talking with participants in the Academy and the couple programs I did for YouTube by the fact that, and I think you'll agree, you actually don't acquire the skills and the knowledge you need to hit the ground running just by climbing through the ranks from the classroom to the district office, becoming an associate superintendent, perhaps on the way there serving as a principal. You acquire a lot of technical savvy and skills, but none of those experiences really are enough. You'd agree, wouldn't you? I guess that's a reason for the
I totally agree. I mean, I think to be a successful superintendent, you have to understand the art of leadership. And I think, just as you said, Doug, I think you can learn a lot of the technical skills, but unless you really spend time exploring and learning about the nuances of leadership as it relates to interacting with boards, with communities, with outside groups, you can't learn that through experiences you've had in other levels of the organization.
Well, now, let's get into the nuts and bolts a bit. Helen, would you talk about how the Academy functions? How are participants selected? How are the particular programs, the educational programs developed? Just tell us how this Academy works.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I'm happy to. So as I mentioned earlier, the Academy runs from July through May, so it's a 10-month Academy. It meets in person 4 times during that time, in July, October, February at the AASA annual meeting, and then in May where participants will deliver their capstones and graduate from the program. So it's pretty intensive, both in-person sessions and we try to have a lot of work going on in between the sessions as well. So participants need to apply, and there's an application on the AASA website. And we have a review panel that consists of senior staff at AASA, Dave as the lead teacher for this program, and two other superintendents who are involved with AASA and have been through our programming, who review the applications to see whether this person would be a good fit for a national academy, and then we put together our cohort acceptances based on the applications and the review.
Could I jump in with a question, Helen?
Sure.
Just quickly, give us some examples of the criteria you're applying. What are a couple of the things you're looking for when you evaluate proposals?
Right. We are looking for someone who has had leadership experience in some level. We generally want someone to be at least a principal level or above in the district. We do personalize our review, so if someone, for instance, at one time we have had someone who had previously been a principal but moved back to a teacher leader role inside the district for personal reasons, but we knew that person had the experience that we wanted them to have to be successful because they had been a principal. But in general, we're looking for some sort of self-starting leadership role inside the district. We're looking for someone who has a vision for what they believe their leadership role to be and what they believe for children and how school systems should serve children. So we definitely want that kind of vision and forward thinking. And we want someone who's really hungry to learn more. Dave, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I think has been really helpful as we've looked to design the program is to incorporate those areas, Doug, that we just talked about in the last question, that individuals may not have opportunities to experience while they're in a different role in the organization. So we make sure that, participants videotape themselves answering questions so we can ensure the tightness of message. But we can also look at, okay, how are you optically appearing and visually appearing on a TV screen? Because there's a lot of things that you may not be thinking about when you're focused on the words coming out of your mouth that send a very powerful message to someone watching you on TV. So that whole act of being very thoughtful and intentional about the experience that the superintendent has and then providing those to the participants, I think is really, really critical. I think the fact that we spend time talking about resumes, cover letters, how to interview. We have meetings with search consultants, so, individuals who are interested in pursuing a superintendency the year that they're in the program have an opportunity to meet with search consultants, and those that are thinking 2 or 3 years down the road, so that they start that process of thinking, number one, they can do it because our participants can. Number two, that when they make that decision to pursue a superintendency, their paperwork is tight enough that's going to get them in front of a board of education or a search committee. And then I think the other piece that has been really helpful, and Helen talked about that desire to learn together, is using problems of practice to help guide our conversations and guide our discussion. So, to provide real case study problems that districts and superintendents are dealing with, and then learning about it together. And so I just had one of our former graduates who's a superintendent reach out to me last week, or I guess it was last month, talking a little bit about the forest fires out in California and how his school district has become a FEMA shelter, and how that's nothing he would have ever thought about before, how to run a school while you're also running a FEMA shelter. And so we talked a little bit through how we might and what steps he could take to ensure learning but safety at the same time. And we walked through that, and that was a great problem of practice then to share with the whole group as we talk about how we move forward and prepare for some things you just can't prepare for. That's why you have to have all those skills and that toolbox worth filled with different traits and abilities and connections to be able to solve a problem.
Great. Now, Helen, why don't you continue by telling us a bit about the Academy experience thus far. How's it gone? What are you particularly satisfied with?
Well, I think, in the middle of our second year, I think it's been a great success. Both in terms of, Dave as our leader, our lead teacher, has really owned bringing this to life, which is incredibly valuable, and all the participants that I ever speak with about the program believe that Dave has changed their learning trajectory, has given them the specific skills that they need, and the insights, the incredible insights like he just described, are highly valuable inside the program for them. So, Dave is a great part of this. From a structural perspective, I think I'm really proud that we were able to bring our curriculum to life. So our curriculum, in the last section didn't get to talk a little bit about, our curriculum is based on standards, our professional standards for education leaders, which are, nationally recognized standards of what education leaders need to be able to do. And we develop essential questions, and those problems of practice that Dave was talking about, to make this a real-world learning experience. And I think we've been effective in doing that. I think these are very learner-centered experiences. People bring their own problems. They count on their colleagues to help them further their learning. And they also give us feedback about how it's going for them. They come to us and say, they come to me and say, Helen, I think we need to learn about this, or I know that in my district we're experiencing this particular kind of problem. Can we incorporate this? And so we are very responsive, and we're nimble, and we get them the information that they need in order to be successful on an ongoing basis. Personalized, if you would want to put it into a word. And I've been very pleased with the high level of engagement on the part of our participants. They are self-starters. They network and create community among themselves, and I am proud that we've been able to create the venue and the avenue for them to be able to learn in this way. Dave, do you have anything more?
It's been a great experience thus far.
It really has.
Oh, it has been, and I would say, what I'm especially satisfied with is the board-savvy superintendent presentations, by far. Just great work by Doug and your team on putting together a PowerPoint that's so tight that the participants really learn from. But I also think, our successes are really defined by those individuals who are pursuing the superintendency. And so we've had a number of successful graduates successfully attain a superintendency last year. We've, in this group this year, we have already had 2 attain superintendency positions. 3 more are going through the process as we speak. And I think that bodes well for us helping prepare them. And I think, part of it is in ensuring that we help give them confidence that they can do the work, because it's scary to go for a job that you're not exactly sure what the job entails. But our people are very capable, and so helping them with some confidence can be really beneficial, and then helping them walk through the process. So, it's not uncommon for me to spend time with somebody before an interview, talking about, okay, let's dialogue a little bit about what is the board looking for? What does that profile say? What does the community look like? Does that fit your skill set? Right? And if it does, great. Let's continue the conversation. If not, don't worry about it. And make sure you don't get in your head, because that can happen, especially with people interviewing for their first superintendency or 2. They get in their head and they overthink the responses instead of just sharing who they are and what they know and what they can add, what the value add for that individual to that district can be. And then I think, debriefing after the interviews, whether they got a second interview or whether they didn't. Either way, it's important to have that debrief, because, you get turned down for a job once or twice. It can be hard to step back out there again. And so one of my roles, one of my obligations to cohort members is that I will help that resilient factor come back. These are all really great people who will become superintendents. They need to be able to continue to look for the perfect fit for them. And if it's not the perfect fit in job A, we're going to find it by job B or job C or job D, and that's totally okay. And then I think our Capstone Project, which we haven't talked a lot about yet, is also really, really powerful. And having participants put together a TED Talk, which is what basically it is, it's the same concept of a TED Talk, with an opening convocation to their staff, is a great way for them to be thinking about their personal mission, vision, credo, goals for the district. Also being thoughtful about the first time you speak to your staff, you better be inspirational. You better make sure you also are thoughtful about ensuring everybody in that room knows that you're the lead learner of the organization and you want to work with them, not directing them, which I think a lot of superintendents in their first jobs can do sometimes without having experience in this program or one of AASA's other programs. They come in as the boss instead of the lead learner and lead organizer and one of a governance team working with that Board of Education. And I think the attitude and approach you take when you enter a district is really, really important because you don't get a second chance to do that.
You know, the Academy is obviously a going concern, solidly established, very successful thus far, but I'm sure as you look ahead, Dave, there are some areas you can see that need sharpening, some improvements that you're considering. Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Well, really a couple things. One, we want to make sure that we have that connection and that community continuing for graduates. So, you know, last year's graduates were the first time through. We've done a really nice job of keeping them together as a community, but over time it's going to be really important for us to be strategic and intentional about continuing to grow that cohort and that cadre. Because the reality is, you know, some of them may get superintendencies this year, well, some will, some next year, some maybe 2 or 3 years. Some of them are the heir apparent, you know, when a superintendent's going to retire in 2 or 3 years. Well, that's awesome, but we need to keep them engaged with AASA and with our certification program. So I think that's really critical. Two,
you know, it occurs to me, just let me jump in a second.
Of course.
Maybe you were going to mention this, but somewhere down the pike, you know, no matter how qualified you are, you're going to end up with a school board where the relationship ruptures through no fault of your own. And, you know, there are many cases of highly effective superintendents actually losing their jobs.
Yep.
As the program goes on, you actually might want to bring back 1 or 2 who've gotten battered in that way and have them share with the group what happened. Or have you already done that, or are you thinking about it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, Doug. There are times when one board election can flip the whole culture of a board, and Helen could probably speak to that better as a former board member. But, I mean, I think one of the things that we spend time talking about, and I think you're absolutely right, we can incorporate it better in future programs, is recognizing that. And you don't have to be the martyr and stay in a situation that's not healthy for you or the board. And so, you know, recognizing when it's time to look to move to a better fit and acknowledging that that's not necessarily a failure on your part. It could just be an election that just changed. And maybe it was a failure on your part where you just misread the community, and that happens sometimes too, you know, but it should be a good fit for both the board and the superintendent. And the reality is, you know, you shouldn't want everybody clamoring to watch your school board meetings to see what kind of drama is going to happen on TV that night, right? I mean, the community should have confidence in you and your board's ability to manage and run the schools, and if they want to check it out, they're checking it out because they're interested, not because they've got a bowl of popcorn and they want to laugh at the dysfunction.
Ellen?
Helen, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I think you've covered it, really, Dave. You know, I don't want to throw school boards under the bus. They do that enough themselves. But Doug, you bring up a good point about opportunities for the future. In preparing young people or rising stars to become superintendents, being honest with them about the pitfalls and about what can go wrong. And we even have a section in the curriculum that says preparing to be blindsided, because it's not if you're going to be blindsided, it's when you're going to be blindsided, and what are some steps you can take regardless of what the blindsiding is to make sure that you respond appropriately you know what steps to take to correct the issue, and you don't turn it into some sort of a circus inside your community, which is exactly what you don't want. So,
and a real blow to your ego.
Yeah.
Once you get over it, it could be turned into a strong learning experience, right? And
That's right.
You can bounce back.
That's right. And one important piece of this that you bring up in terms of being able to have somebody who's been through a tough time come back and talk about it is that these academy sessions are safe places. It's one of those, what happens in the academy stays in the academy, and people really value that because they're able to open up, talk about things that have happened to them, share things that maybe they wish they had done differently in the past, and get honest feedback about how to correct in the future. And you have to have a supportive, loving, trusting community environment to be able to do that. And we have been able to develop that inside both of our cohorts and with those leaders who come back and do sessions with our participants.
Well, this has been a great program. I want to thank you, Dave and Helen, for taking the time to tell us about the Aspiring Superintendents Academy. Really appreciate it. And want to wish you a great afternoon and a very happy New Year.